All right. So we were discussing the question types from paper one, comprehension section. And right, we talked about last time on how to approach a comprehension. Right? You can skim the text and then read the questions and then scan for the answers. Or you could do some intensive reading, right? And then go to all the questions, then start with the first question. If it has subparts, you read the subparts so you know exactly how much to answer for each part. And then you go and find the answers, right? Also, uh, each mark requires one valid point, and your answers need to be precise and to the point as required. Some questions have a reference to the line numbers, so that is either from where a phrase that may be given in italics or inverted commas in the question, uh, where you can find that phrase, or right the lines from where you could get the actual answer. So we will take a look at that today. Okay. If the question mentions a specific number of points that are required, then you obviously give those many points, and you make sure that you're answering them separately, as in you put a full stop after the first point and then you start the new point as a new sentence. Right? In the question paper, we'll see that they've given you separate space to write it, right, with bullet points. So we'll take a look at that. And then, differentiating between explicit and implicit questions, right? Explicit, and implicit meaning questions. So, right, one of the questions that are obviously of implicit meaning are the ones that are asking you to use your own words, where you need to identify keywords or phrases from the text and then rephrase them and then write them on your own. Okay, so let's take a look at the questions again. We did identify some of these. So, right, question one, again, we're not attempting the question itself, we're understanding how this works. So, question one uh, is, by the way, I didn't ask, can you see my screen properly? Okay, good. So if there's anything you want to convey, you can put that in the chat. So in question one, you can see that they've quoted a phrase from the text, and that's in inverted commas, right? The opposite of most trees. And then they've put in a line number. So this is a reference to where this phrase can be found. So we go to the text and we go to line two, right? So line one starts from here, the actual text. This part given italics is just an introduction, so it's not part of the actual text of the comprehension. And you can see over here in line two, it's numbered by every 5 lines. And in line two, you can see the opposite of most trees. So that line reference is to where the phrase has been taken from. It is not where you can find the answer. The answer is in this paragraph, right? In a few lines before, I mean, there are only 3.5 lines. So anyway, right? So this is where you'll find the answer, but the reference is to where they pick the phrase from. Okay. Using your own words, explain what the text means by ancient giant of the forest. Now, again, this line references to where they picked this phrase from. So, right, again, this line number 3 and right, ancient giant of the forest. Now, in this case, why have they given you a line reference? Well, it's a using your own words question, which means, and it's for 2 marks. So from ancient giant of the forest, you need to pick out 2 keywords, right, from this phrase, which in this case is ancient and giant, because those are the 2 that make sense. And you need to write your answer using synonyms for ancient and giant. Okay. The way you can do that is either you can write a full sentence. So if I just go to the whiteboard, right, you can in this particular question, which is question B, right, of the specimen. So you can either write a full sentence using the synonyms that you've decided. Synonyms, right? And those synonyms can be either single words or synonym phrases. Or, right, that once you've identified the keywords, which in this case are ancient and giant, right, what you can do is you can write the word ancient, and so that tells the examiner you've identified it, although you won't get a mark just for identifying it. Keep that in mind. And then you write your synonym, and then you write giant on the next line. You put a colon, and then you write your synonym. That works as well, right? So either of those approaches to answering that particular question. Okay. Next, question C, we see give two features. So they've highlighted two, they've made it bold, and so that means you need to give two features. In the space for the answer, they've put in bullet points and they've given you two separate lines for each of those features. So you obviously write one feature here and the other one here. Okay. If in case they didn't give you the bullet points, right? It's just two lines, straight lines like over here. Okay. And so on your own, do not put bullet points in your answers. Do not put numbering in your answer. Write two separate sentences, right? Write one sentence with one feature, put a full stop, write the next sentence with the other feature, put a full stop, or you can use a conjunction and perhaps, right, depending on what information you're giving in the answer, right, to make it clear that these are the two features. So it should be clear that what you're writing down are two different features. Now, the line reference given over here, you can see there's a range, lines 5 to 9. When, like, for example, right, if I just scroll down and you can see this is a 3-mark question. We're not attempting the question, like, we're not discussing the question right now, but you can see that you're given like around 6 lines. It's a 3-mark question. So you need 3 details, right? And so what you don't want to do is for each detail, you're not going to put a number like 1, right? And right, you're not going to write down 1 and then 2 and then 3, right? You don't want to do that, or putting in bullet points or stars or any kind of mark like an arrow, right? You don't want to do that. So what you want to do is, right, they're asking for 3 details, right? It's worth 3 marks. And so you're going to write down sentences, right? So and so and so, full stop, right? So and so and so and so, full stop, so and so and so, and more of that, full stop. That's how you want to attempt it. All right. Okay. Now going back to the question we were on, sorry. And so question C is giving you a range, lines 5 to 9. And so that's telling you that in between these 4 or 5 lines is where you will find the answer, because there is no phrase that they're quoting over here, right? So you go to the text and you see, okay, 5 to 9 is this paragraph over here, right? And so you'll be able to find the 2 features they're asking for from this paragraph. Okay. Right, now if you understand how this works, right, they're asking for 2 details that show the relentless speed. So you see that they're quoting a phrase from the text. And so that's line 18. And again, right, if you go to the text and take a look at line 18, which is over here, right? Right, so you can see that relentless speed is in line 18. That's not the answer, right? And so what they're asking for is two details that show the relentless speed. And so you want to look a bit, a few lines ahead, or maybe, read the whole paragraph just in case, a little bit after, and then you're going to figure out, okay, what are the points that I'm looking for this answer? Okay, again, they're quoting this phrase. The line reference is for that phrase. It's not where you're going to find the answer. Question F, right? So we're looking at the question types and how to understand them. How does Mo feel about trying to climb nameless? Now, you should be familiar with this because the last class I asked you to read through the comprehension. So how does he feel? And they've given you the range of lines 22 to 34. And right, and because this question has parts, we're going to read both parts, as I mentioned, right? So we understand what exactly are they asking for. And so the next part, so the first part is how does he feel? And then give two details from the text to support your answer. So there's a few things you need to understand from what's given here. First of all, the line reference, the range that is given is where you're going to find your answers for both part 1 and part 2. Okay, so line 22 to 34 is all of this. Okay, so this is the part of the text where you're going to find the answer. One thing. Now, if we break this up and we look at it carefully, and that's what's expected, how does he feel about trying to climb nameless? That is not given directly. If you read this part of the text, you will see that that feeling is not given in so many words. It's hinted, it's something you need to figure out. And so this question, right? If I, which was the writing one again? Okay. So, right, this one is an implicit meaning question. Sorry about the handwriting. And then, right, this part is asking you two details from the text, right? And because they're asking you to give two details from the text, that is obviously an explicit meaning question. All right. So you need to figure out the feeling, and then you need to give details from the text that, right, help you understand that feeling. And so you need to write that down. And so, right, in the answer space, one is for the feeling. And then right over here, going to put in the two details. On a similar note, right, just let me clear that out. Okay. Then what do we have? We have, right, so this one again is an explicit meaning question. And generally, the way the comprehension progresses is, as you can see, it's progressing. So every question that follows is from a later part of the text than the previous one, right? So over here, they've given lines 22 to 34. Over in this question, they haven't given a line reference. So you can, right, you can guess that it's maybe from right after line 34, or maybe some part over here, and then right what follows. Sorry. Right, and so during his climb, he discovered a problem, what it was, and how did he. Again, it has two parts. So what was the problem? So I only write the problem, right? I don't write too much detail. And then how do you decide to solve the problem? So I write down solution. Each is worth 1 mark. And right. And so if I read this, right, I would understand, okay, so this is from the next part of the text that is after line 34, most likely, and it actually is. Finally, another own words question using your own words. Now over here, you can see that they haven't given you any reference to a phrase, right? and they're asking you explain using your own words Marwood's different feelings about Mo climbing nameless. Give three details from anywhere in the text to support your answer. So again, this is similar to the question we just dealt with, right? The feelings are not clearly given, and so in the text, and so that would be implicit, right? When you read the text, you'll obviously figure that out. And then the details are they're asking you to give it from the text, and so that will be explicit, clearly explicit. Okay. And in this case, it's 3 marks, and you'll be thinking, well, three feelings and three details, so that's 6. Well, no, obviously the way it will work is each feeling plus the detail that you're going to use to as evidence to support that feeling, that this is how I think he's feeling based on what's given in the text, and that's going to give you 1 mark. Okay. And so 3 feelings, you multiply that by 3, and you obviously get your 3 marks. All right, so 3 feelings and 3 details. Any questions so far? Okay. Now, obviously, the questions will be different for each comprehension from each paper, each session. But the understanding of the question type and how to approach is what matters, right? The content will be different, the text will be different. Sure, but as long as we know how to attempt it, we'll be able to fare well. Okay. Now moving on to question 2 of the comprehension. Right, question 2, these are questions, right, for what the syllabus calls writer's meaning and effect. Okay, so over here, each of these questions, they're all implicit, all of them. And so that's the tricky bit. They're worth a total 9 marks. So one question took 1 mark, 2 mark, 1 mark, 2 mark, and the last one is worth 3 marks. And right, each of these questions, the answer is not available directly, right? And so you just take a look at these again, the line reference, right? So if you've understood that, you can figure out. So over here, they've quoted this particular line from this particular part of the text, lines 45 to 46. And what they're asking you is, what does the writer want to suggest about this situation at this point of the story? And so that's not something that's given in the text. That's something you need to figure out by reading it and just trying to put yourself in that. So this is where proper reading skills, right? Being involved in the reading. So proper reading skills for all of these questions, and being involved, being an involved reader. So what you want to do is, right, people who are involved, who have a habit of reading and who can become involved in what they're reading, they put themselves in that situation. They're like, oh, okay, I'm reading. So perhaps, right, if he just read this through, he felt gravity go to 0. The world stopped. Mo watched the branch of the large redwood approach in slow motion and saw his fingers extend towards us. So, right, it's only worth 1 mark. But what am I feeling when I'm reading this, right? Or what I mean, what's the situation like? Like he's jumping across, and he's reaching towards it, and maybe you could say, right, for the answer, you could say that there's tension or suspense, right? And right, that's exactly where it is, right? So you could say anything could happen. right? At this point, when you're reading it, you could say like, there's so much suspense. Like, will he reach the branch? Will he fall? Will he get hurt? Like, what's going to happen? That kind of thing. Right? And that is exactly, I mean, that is the answer, right? I mean, just two. So any of these would work. And so, right, as I mentioned, that these are implicit meaning questions. You need to get in, you need to put yourself into that situation. You need to be involved with the text. You need to feel the text, right? Feel it. Also, right, there's a particular bit of imagination that's going to go in along with all of that, and a bit of exaggeration. Right now, we're not attempting each of these questions. We're not attempting the comprehension itself, and so, right, we'll when we actually attempt it as practice, we'll see where the imagination and the exaggeration comes in. Okay. So again, line reference to, right, a quoted phrase, and again, what two impressions. So what effect, what meaning, what is the writer trying to achieve by saying it like this in these lines? And same, what effect is he suggesting, right, using this word in these lines, right? And so because it's worth 2 marks, and so for this particular word in these lines, you need to give two effects, like what comes to mind when you read the word labyrinth over here. Okay. Now, obviously, vocabulary is also, if you know what labyrinth means, well and good. It will be easier to connect the dots. If not, then that's where contextual meaning comes in. And so, for either using your own word questions, or questions like this where they've given you a word and you're supposed to explain it. And if you don't know what it means, then what you're going to do is you're going to go towards contextual meaning. Are you familiar with what contextual meaning is? Right. So what you're calling the figurative meaning that is displayed in the text, that is what is called contextual meaning, right? So that could also be the literal meaning in, right? Or it could be slightly different, right? Also, you know that many words have more than one meaning depending on how they're used. Even when you go and check the meaning of a word in a dictionary, they'll give you different uses, they'll give you multiple meanings for the same word, and they'll give you examples. Okay, if you use it like this, it has this meaning. If you use it like this, and so that's is basically, right, contextual. That's called context, right? So when, where, and how the word is used. Okay. And so if you go to line 53 and 54, uh, um, okay, that's a bit of a mess. All right, so if you go to line 53 and 54, so over here, right, all of this is the line they've quoted, climbing upward slowly. So yeah, okay, up till lost sight of the ground, I believe. Yes. And so, right, this is the word labyrinth. And so the way I'm going to figure it out is I'm going to read this part of the text, right? A few lines before, a few lines after, and then try to understand the way it's used, where it's used, how it's used. Try and figure out what they're hinting towards, what they want, what meaning, possible meaning this word is giving. All right. So that's what contextual meaning is, and that's what you're calling the figurative meaning in the text. All right. Okay. And then, right, we have the last question over here for 3 marks. And what they've done is that they've given you this part of the text, lines 54 to 59. And you don't really need to go to the insert. They've given it all over here. And identify one example from the text of how the writer uses language effectively to convey Mo's feelings after Mo has lost sight of the ground. So that's obviously the part of the text over here. Right? Oh, sorry. After he's lost sight of Swift, so 54 to 59. So, right? All of this. Now, they've given you, right, space for example, space for explanation. Now, the example could be something such as passing through a membrane. That phrase, it doesn't need to be the whole line. It doesn't need to be a big part. Passing through a membrane, entering another world, senses were overwhelmed, right? Life all around, could be any of these and more, right? And so what you do over here is, for example, right, you're going to write entering another world. And that's obviously explicit meaning because you're taking that phrase, that part of the text directly. And that's going to get you 1 mark. The other 2 marks, the first 3 marks, is for explanation. So 2 points of explanation, which are related to this, the example that you've used. Okay, it shouldn't be something random. So how saying that it was as if he was entering another world, what does that tell us about his feelings? What was he feeling? Right, and so you explain that, you give 2 points, you get your 3 marks. All right. Now again, right, the question, the text, the content will be different, but the approach is what we're focusing on. Any questions before we move on to the next part, which is the summary? Any questions, Farwa? Okay, good. All right, so the next question, which is section B, is the summary. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. You go to text B, and right, that's this one over here. It's not a very long text. It's like 42 lines only. Okay. Now again, before reading the summary questions, you read section B and say, read text B and answer the question. Okay, I'm not reading the question. It says read text B, that's what I'm going to do first. So I go to the insert, I open up text B, A Night Among the Trees, right? And then I read the whole thing intensive reading, right? Just like we talked about. And I'm not marking anything, I'm just understanding, I'm taking it all in. What is this talking about? They've given an introductory line. The writer of this review has just returned from a visit to the Tree Hotel in northern Sweden. Okay, fine. I've read the whole thing. Now let's read the question. The question is to summarize. Okay, sure. Summarize what would appeal most to the guests about a stay at the Tree Hotel. Okay, this is important. What would appeal most to the guests, right? So what they're giving you is giving you a theme to focus on in the summary. So you don't have to summarize the whole text. You don't have to summarize everything. No, don't do that. Right? So you have to find points for this theme. Okay. Next, you must use continuous writing. So, right, no bullet points. It should be as a paragraph. Can you split it into two paragraphs? Sure, no issue. Okay, it can also, can it work as a single paragraph, one paragraph only? Yes, it can. Why? Because the word count is really low. It's only 150 words. It's not a lot. Okay, use your own words where appropriate. Avoid copying log sections. So this goes together. Okay, if you're just copying long sections of the text, you're not using your own words, obviously. Right, and you can see over here it says in bold up to 10 marks available for content and 10 marks for the quality of your writing. The quality of your writing, those 10 marks, are using your own words, and also, right, if you've written it properly, so the grammar, when you're using your own words, what kind of vocabulary are you using, right? The punctuation, the sentence structure, right? So all of that goes in. Also, it says where appropriate. So that doesn't mean that where I can find a different word. That means in, right, for most of the summary, you're supposed to use your own words, except for where maybe there is a terminology, or maybe a word that is giving us, it's a word, it's not a terminology, but the way it has been used in the text is it's giving specific meaning that you can't really, replace with a synonym. And so in those few cases, you can just use that word and you won't be penalized, right? But those are few cases. Acha. 10 marks available for content. That means you need 10 points, 10 different points, right? 1 mark for 1 point, right? That's how Cambridge works. Your summary should be no more than 150 words. What does that mean? Okay, that means that if it's, right, the summary is above 150 words, right, the cutoff is 150. That means that anything above 150, even if it's a single word, will not be checked. So you can't, this limit is very strict. You can't go above it. Can you write less? Yeah, okay, fine. Maybe 135, 140 is the lower limit. They haven't mentioned it, but that's, I wouldn't go lower than that, because there's so few words you have to compute your summary, and you're supposed to add those 10 points. If you're writing less, that probably means that you missed a point or a few points. And if you're writing more, that most definitely means that you're going into unnecessary details. Okay. Also, when they're asking for 10, that means that with the examiner, they have the mark scheme, obviously, and it's also for the previous sessions, it's available online and you can check it. And you will see that there will be somewhere around 12 to 13 points available, right? So any 10 of them will do. But when you're reading the text, and if you're able to find more than 10, write 11 to 12. If you find, because there will be 11 to 12 points when they're asking for 10. Achha, why do you want to do that? It's pretty simple, right? You will not get more than 10 marks. If you've got 10 correct points, 10 marks. So if you've written 11 or 12, you won't get extra marks. But why are we doing that? We're doing that as a safety net, right? So we're placing a net on our summary. Why? Because I don't exactly know, I can be confident, but I don't exactly know if the 10 points that I've written are all correct. So, right, if I've only written 10 and 2 of them are wrong, I end up with 8 marks. If I've written 11 and 2 of them are wrong, I still get 9 marks, which is pretty good. And then 12 and 2 wrong, and so I still get my full marks, right? And so if possible, I want to write those extra points. Okay, so that's all about the summary. Any questions? Okay. And finally, right, the short response. You can see there's plenty of space given for the question, for the answer, and for the short response. Okay, so this Kent Lindwall is the person. I'm going to speed up a bit. There are only 2 minutes left for the meeting. And if there's any confusion, we can come back to this next class on Tuesday. So this person is the owner of the Tree Hotel, right? And there's a bit of role play. Imagine you are this person. You were interviewed by a local news program about the effect the hotel is having on the environment. Okay, fine. What's the question? They're asking you a question. They want your opinion. Here's the question. Some local people think that the Tree Hotel might have a negative effect on the environment. Okay, fine. So that's the question. What is your opinion? Why? Your opinion, meaning your opinion as the owner of the hotel. Now, you can say yes or no. Well, no. You need to figure out what your opinion will be based on the role they've given you and the information in the text. And when you read the text, I didn't ask you to read it right now, but when you read the text, right, Kent Linville, the owner who you are role playing as, will be giving you lots of benefits and how they've, being careful about not to harm the environment, etc., etc. And so you're going to say, well, no, I don't think that it's harming the environment. So this question is worth 5 marks, right? And so you write your opinion, and that will give you 1 mark. And then why, right? So the why, you need 2 reasons, that will give you 2 marks, plus, as in the comprehension, 2 details from text for support. And that will give you two marks. So right, that's how the 5 marks works. And so you get this from the text, you figure this out, right? And also this, and we're done with the reading paper. All right, the meeting is about to end. So if there's any question that you have, you can put in the chat, and we'll meet again next class, inshallah.